Hi, my name is Todd Gray with Kentucky Baptist Convention. Welcome to Leadership Lessons, where we're learning from leaders who are making a difference. If you're joining on Facebook Live, feel free to add comments or questions, anything about topics that matter to you. You can also go to toddgray.org and hear any or all of the 50-plus episodes so far. If you're a Kentucky Baptist pastor or church member, thank you for making resources like this available through your cooperative program giving. And I also want to add, especially this week, thank you for your prayers and support for Sunrise Children's Services. The outpouring of support has been incredible as Sunrise is trying to work through their ministry model and work in cooperation as best they can with the Bashir administration. But the support from Kentucky Baptist and others has been absolutely incredible. Today, you're going to hear from a leader who, like the rest of us, is under construction. God saves us, shapes us, sets us apart for ministry. And Senator Westerfield, he also sustains us. He keeps us going in what he gives us to do. My guest is Senator Whitney Westerfield. Grew up in the Fruit Hill community of Christian County. Some folks will know exactly where that is. I do, near Lacey and near Hopkinsville. He's married to Amanda. He and Amanda have two children, Hadley and Hayes, who are 6 and about 3.5. Member of Newark Fellowship in Hopkinsville. His father, Tom Westerfield, was active in Kentucky Baptist life. He was a blue hat for disaster relief and just gave a lot of local leadership to disaster relief, was much loved and left a great name behind. Whitney is one of 6 siblings, all boys. I can only imagine what it's like growing up in that household. 15 grandchildren. He's a lawyer by trade, went to University of Kentucky in communications and then Southern Illinois University. Holds office in the Kentucky State Senate as a senator since 2013, and he's a blessing to Kentucky Baptist. Senator Westerfield received the Guardian of Life Award because of his convictional stance on pro-life. Senator Westerfield, thank you for taking the time and joining on Leadership Lessons.
All right, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, we really appreciate it and appreciate you and your ongoing good work. Well, let's talk about your upbringing and how you came to faith. So where did you grow up? I've referenced that, but you go a little deeper with
it. Right here where I'm recording today, here in the metropolis of Fruit Hill, just a few miles from the old Lacey School. Address says Crofton, and I'm proud to claim that. Grew up here, went to public school here in Christian County, graduated from high school in Christian County High School in 1999, went to UK, as you mentioned. Graduated on time in 4 years and went straight to law school. Started law school down at actually a private Christian college law school, Mississippi College. It's got a Clinton, Mississippi campus, but they've got a law school program in Jackson. And I finished my first year of law school there and then transferred to SIU in Carbondale to be a little closer to home. Finished that on time in 3 years and then came right home to work in Hopkinsville as an assistant Commonwealth's attorney part of the time and kept my private practice open from the first day also. Thankfully passed the bar on the first shot, and I've been practicing law ever since and decided to run for the Senate in 2012. Actually, very narrowly avoided running for the House 2 years earlier in 2010. It's one of those moments in life where I very clearly, just profoundly clear, crystal clear, felt God's presence and direction in what to do, and in this case, what not to do. I had the filing paperwork in my hand. A lot of people around here locally were encouraging me to do it. I knew the state representative, John Tilley, a friend of mine from Hopkinsville, who I would have been running against, and decided not to a day or two before the filing deadline. And then 2 years later, decided to run against a 20-year Democratic incumbent in 2012 for the Senate seat. And God blessed me with a victory on election night. And it's been an interesting and encouraging and sometimes a frustrating exercise ever since.
So on the decision not to run, you had a sense of the leadership of the Lord. Was there ever anything on the other side of it where that decision made sense or where you felt like God's restraint?
No question. First, I have there are a few instances in life where I have felt such clear guidance from God and it was unassailable, and I have never doubted it. That's one of those moments. A guidance or a directive not to do something, despite a lot of pressure to do it. And I felt sure of it even after the fact. People were disappointed and so forth. But 2 years later, I ended up winning an election to a Senate seat that no one thought a Republican could win. Mm-hmm. I was made Senate Judiciary Chairman on my first day on the job, which is a rare thing. And I've held that chair ever since. I've been blessed with that. And I've had an opportunity to oversee and have influence on a whole host of things in the intervening 8.5 years that I wouldn't have had a chance to do had I not waited in 2010 to run in 2012 for something different.
Yeah.
So I see the proof of the rightness of that decision all the time.
Yeah, that's encouraging. So, Senator Westerfield, how important was faith in your family? Were your mother and father both believers when you were growing up?
They were. I was brought up along with my 5 brothers as a staple spot in the balcony at First Baptist Church in Hopkinsville. Was at church whenever the doors were open, as a lot of kids and families are even now. Just when the church has got something going on, that's where we were, whether it was Wednesday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night, RAs and GA. Well, we didn't have any GAs in our household, but we were there all the time. I was received the Holy Spirit and accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior at a very young age. I was baptized. I know I shouldn't, and I'm not really disappointed in it, but I occasionally, I'm a little envious of people who have had a more profound story than that.
Yeah.
But it's still important.
Sure.
I don't know that I would have latched onto the church and stayed with it if my mother and father weren't so grounded in it themselves and didn't beat me over the head with it, as they should have in a good, loving parent way and biblical way. They took care of us and raised us in that environment. And now my family, and I'm doing that for my kids. My wife and I, finding a wife that was a Christian was incredibly important, supremely important. And raising our children with an eye on Scripture and prayer and reminding them about God's creation all around us and God's role in our lives. That's the most important thing. And it certainly played a part and continues to play a part every day in my work as a legislator. It guides the decisions I make, whether to do or not to do things.
Yeah. Well, so your experience of coming to faith early and maybe not living that lifestyle, others who came to faith later out of a difficult lifestyle probably wish they had your story.
Right. The grass is always greener, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The other way is the better way.
I brought plenty of baggage into Christianity with me that it would have been nice to have avoided. So you're in the legal field. You went to college in communications and then law school. Why did you choose the legal profession?
I thought that being an attorney would be a door to any number of other areas of either professional work and a future run for office. I wanted to be well informed and educated in the legal practice before I decided to run for office. Running for office is something I had wanted to do for some time and had aspirations to do long before I did it. Not that we need any more lawyers in the legislature. We could use some more farmers and teachers and blue collar workers that can be trusted to make good decisions on public policy more than we need any more lawyers. But that was the decision I made. And went straight from undergraduate to law school and then came to practice right after that. So it's what I decided to do, and it's been invaluable to me, both as a judiciary chair and guiding the policy decisions that I make there, and frankly, having an understanding of the legal system.
Yep.
It doesn't affect every single thing that comes before my committee, but it affects a lot, and it informs my opinion about a whole host of other bills and policies that go through other committees, because of its relationship to the justice system or to people who are going through the justice system, either on the criminal side or the civil side. Between that and being able to do the work that I do for people here at home or for organizations and offering free legal advice here and there wherever I can, or even just to my family, they all appreciate it.
Oh, I'm sure.
They've got a lawyer on call all the time.
Absolutely, man. Everybody wishes they had their deal. Well, so you practice.
A funny quick story. When I started law school down in Mississippi, I had my contracts professor, who's a great guy, super fun, very quiet, even keeled sort of guy, but funny. And he was from Montana, but teaching law school down in Mississippi. And we were coming near the midpoint Thanksgiving break for our first semester of law school. And he said, now you've been learning all this semester. You're going to go home. You've had one midterm as sort of a practice run on exams. You're going to go home and get Can a Man questions. Can a Man questions. Can a man go and do something here? And the Can a Man questions never stop.
You're still getting it. Now your website says you have your own law firm now, and your website says that you do have a variety of law. Is there any particular specialty that you end up doing more of just because it's where the business is?
It has changed based on what my practice or what sort of clients have come in. I do a lot of work for some healthcare providers in our area, which really covers all kinds of things, from contract negotiations and drafting to litigation to employment-related things. Of late, there have been a lot of instances where I've done a lot of eviction-related work. Yeah. That's a huge issue that the Judiciary Committee, I assure you, will be investigating, looking into this summer in the interim. But it really has just varied. I don't have a big major practice. I don't practice with a big firm. And sometimes I get whatever work just walks in the door or calls me. That's what small town law practicing is all about.
Well, and the eviction notice, I think that is going to grow. I mean, guys who are landlords, who are not slumlords, but just decent business owners, they care about their work, and they're in an impossible situation.
They are. The two dockets we were talking before we started recording, I was in court this morning in Jefferson and in Fayette County. Both of those were eviction dockets, and I'm representing some properties that have worked with a lot of people, and frankly, most of these are. At least today, most of them have resulted in some sort of rental assistance being paid, which is helpful both for the tenant, because they continue to have a place to live, but for the landlord, who themselves have financial obligations to me. They get paid. But there's a whole bunch of others where that rental assistance isn't even being sought by some tenants. And you've got landlords that are facing really challenging dire financial situations and circumstances. We could have a whole nother 2-hour talk about the CDC and the moratorium on evictions and so forth, and how I think it's unconstitutional. But again, that's another talk for another day.
Sure.
But I'll tell you that as of yesterday, there were 7,414 pending evictions in Kentucky statewide.
Wow.
That is a ridiculous number of cases just sitting and waiting.
Wow.
Where people are staying wherever they're staying. And some of those people are genuinely still hurt by the pandemic.
Yep, absolutely.
There's a lot of them that aren't.
Yeah.
They're just taking advantage of landlords and the processes that are in place to help people that are hurting from the pandemic. But that dam's going to break at some point.
Yeah.
It's a bad situation for everybody.
Well, as a Christian, you're discerning and care about both sides of that issue. So right. Just real quick on legal profession, a lot of our only exposure is either one generation watched Matlock, another one watches Law and Order. Any surprises for you when you got into the law work? Anything you were expecting that's like, oh, I didn't know it was going to be like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more paper pushing than television makes it out to be. Yeah. It's a lot more reading. And researching, at least in my practice, than television makes it out to be. I'm also frustrated because the television, the media, drives what the practice ends up being about. I'll tell you an example from my time as a prosecutor. I tried 30 some odd cases in my 5 years in the prosecutor's office and the Commonwealth's attorney's office before I ran for the Senate. And juries are convinced that there is DNA evidence or fingerprint evidence. There is some sort of forensic evidence in every single case, even in cases where law enforcement is never even trained to gather it because of the circumstances or the other evidence that they have. But juries come to expect it because that's what they see on CSI. The CSI effect is a real thing. And I've seen juries toss cases that everyone else in the room is certain the defendant is guilty because a fingerprint wasn't even obtained. Despite evidence being with someone's mail in their chest of drawers, in their house with their wallet and so forth. That kind of stuff is frustrating to see that drive reality in that way. And so we've had to adjust, and practitioners have had to adjust. It's also caused a problem policy-wise and budgeting-wise for the legislature and the state police crime lab because they're overworked and understaffed and criminally underpaid. But that's a whole other topic for another day. We're one of the lowest paid state crime labs in the country. We're several $1,000s beneath every competing state around us, and we're operating at a staff shortage right now at our state crime lab, which impacts victims, defendants, and everybody else's cases who are sitting there and pending, waiting on lab results. So there's a ton of that stuff I've learned and seen over my time as a practitioner out of school and off of television.
I have to say, just this conversation is encouraging. You obviously care about all these issues, and they're all justice issues. And it sounds like you want to address the things that are just not working the way they're supposed to work in government.
We're trying to. It's frustrating. Any person watching this that's ever sat on a committee at church knows how frustrating governing by committee can sometimes be.
Yeah.
You may have an honorary chairman or chairwoman. You may have an honorary member of the committee here or there. Well, I share a committee with 137 other people, and some of them are honorary.
Yeah.
And some of them are very well-meaning. You've got some really good people trying to do a lot of good work, but it's still hard to find consensus between 138 people. Even if you took just the 105 of us, I guess there are, in the Republican Party between both chambers, you're going to find 120 different opinions about how best to do something. So it's a challenging exercise, but important.
Well, that's what they say about Baptists. Where two are gathered, you have three opinions. So
that's right.
You're prepared for that. So let's talk about your elected office. You got in it in 2013, I think is the date you started as a senator, and you've mentioned a little bit of the why. Sounds like that was something that was in you from an early age. So kind of what was it that sparked you to want to move in that direction, to run for office, which seems like it would be very difficult and expensive?
I don't know that I can pinpoint a time when I first, had like a light bulb moment thinking that's what I want to do. But I remember from high school and college on, I really was thinking about political aspirations and things that I wanted to do. I got involved with my local county party organization and volunteered and met a lot of the people that would one day help me run for office and got to know them. And they got to know me. And so eventually, again, decided to run in 2012 against a 20-year incumbent and narrowly won. The vote was, I think I won by 297 votes between my three counties in the district. And it's been, and then that was so narrow. And then 4 years later, ran for re-election unopposed. Yeah. And was just humbled by that. That I had done well enough, and that I assume I did well enough and was a strong enough candidate that no one thought that either I needed to be opposed or that I would be successfully opposed. And I hope I've shown my constituents that I'm worth keeping in that position. And thankfully, they reelected me again last November to another 4-year term to keep doing the work that I've been trying to do, trying to improve government, keep it more efficient, to reduce our wasteful spending, but to make sure that we put resources where we need to and where our policies do what's best for people in our communities, making sure we're safe, making sure that people who have done bad things and are in prison have an opportunity to successfully transition and hopefully never return to prison. To give opportunities for unborn children to live, to protect them. That's at the top of my priority list. That was one of the big things that got me to run in the first place. I categorically opposed so many of the things that my opponent back in 2012 had spent 20 years in the legislature doing. And I have respect for the former Senator Pendleton, and I didn't have any problem with him personally. But his policy positions I just profoundly disagreed with, two in particular. And one of those were our pro-life issues. That's a central core tenet for me and a principle for me. I wanted to make sure that unborn children are protected by policy. And in 2012, we hadn't had any of the legislative victories that you and I have enjoyed and our pro-life colleagues around the state have enjoyed in the last several years, particularly since the House flipped to Republican control. We hadn't passed any of those measures. And he would say he'd support them back home, but wouldn't vote to support them even on procedural votes in the Senate. The other one, and regrettably that this other one came up this year, and that's the gambling issue. He supported gambling, was a co-sponsor of the constitutional amendment or the bill back in 2012 to promote casino gambling here in Kentucky. And I just I profoundly oppose that. It is a tax on our poor. It is a regressive tax in that regard. It's an evil that breeds and brings on more evil and more harm to our people. He supported that, and I didn't. So I ran in 2012 with those two things at the top of my list, making a distinction between the two of us.
And Senator Westerfield, I think you touched on something that, we think we know what a person believes on these matters when we cast a vote, but what actually shows up is where the rubber meets the road when there are specific bills and votes that come up. I want to talk to you about several specific bills. Let me ask you something else about elected office. So if there's a 16, 18, 21-year-old watching us and is thinking about elected office, what kind of advice would you give to him or her?
Get involved in the local party. Yep. And we've got a reorganization coming up statewide in the Republican Party this year in every county organization. But get involved and meet the people, meet your elected officials, sure, but also meet your volunteers and the people that work and meet every month in your local party. 2, get informed on the issues. For the love of Pete, please do not just pay attention to what you see posted on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram or on someone's blog. Read the legislation. And if you've got questions, if you have concerns or issues about legislation that your public official is considering, even if it's at the city council level or in Congress or at the state legislature in Frankfort, reach out to that legislator directly and ask them. If you don't understand something, ask them to clarify. If you disagree with it, tell them you disagree with it. And if it's a decision, a deal breaker for you, then fine. When you have a chance to vote, that can be part of your rationale for how you vote. But get involved and get informed. The number of people who will pay attention to something they see circulating on Facebook or on Twitter, and I'm on Twitter a bunch every day. I'm not nearly on Facebook as much. I actually unpublished my campaign Facebook page just because of the ugliness of Facebook. I just don't care for it.
Sure.
And so I implore people not to get informed or be informed by nonsense that they see circulating online, but just to be dedicated and deliberate about learning about what the issues really are. You can't always trust what you see on television.
Yep.
Everything on the right is spun. Everything on the left is spun. You've got to find your middle way without being caught up in the spin.
So what do you do to stay informed on your conviction on on several issues? You bring that. I mean, that's who you are. But there are also things that are important to your constituents. So how do you discover what's really important and what's really creating a groundswell?
Yeah, you talk to them and you engage with them. I mean, I get emails and calls every day from people across the Senate district. I see them in the grocery store. I see them at the gas station. We talk. So I learn what issues are important. And a lot of the messages that I've heard over the last several years since I've been in office continue to be the same sort of messages to make sure that we're doing certain things. And there's a lot of overlap. And then there are a lot of places where there isn't overlap, where state legislature has authority on certain things. Congress has authority on other things. And a lot of people have a lot. And then, I'm communicating those to our federal delegation, things that are related to what the Congress can do or should do. But you have to be engaged and talk to the people that you represent and stay in touch with them. There are, and just like every other legislator, there's a slew of ways to reach us. You mentioned I've got a law practice website. I also have a campaign website. That's still there. I got an unemployment-related inquiry on that website, on my campaign website, just about an hour ago. You can still get me through the legislature's official website and find me there. So you just have to stay involved and stay engaged with your people.
What are you hearing folks talk about right now? So if the folks in your area,
executive orders from executive orders from the governor that are unconstitutional and they're killing our economy and holding our economy back. Unemployment.
Yeah, those two.
The governor sent out a press release. I think it's great. Commissioner Quarles has been very active, criticizing the governor for not reopening the state. I've shared that view. Others have shared that view, and I agree with it. We need to we need to get things open completely, and we shouldn't need to wait until June and August to do that when all these other states are announcing it. Even the District of Columbia has announced a reopening later this month.
I heard, by the way, from Senator from Quarles is who I heard it from. He's been like a dog on a bone on that issue.
Yeah, well, and he deserves the credit for having done it. And it's annoyed the governor enough that he's put out a couple of statements and he's responded at press conferences and the like, criticizing politicians that are calling for an opening date. And he's tried to brag about how our economy is poised to do this, that, and the other. He continues to ignore tens of thousands of people waiting for unemployment. That every without exception, every single email or call I get about unemployment is from a constituent from either my 3 counties or somewhere else in the state who's reached out to every legislator or whatever legislator they can find who can't get a human to answer the phone, who won't get a call back. And they've waited for days, weeks, in some cases, in many cases, months. Talked to a guy just yesterday, Todd, who is 2 weeks away from being destitute. Wow. He's burned through all of his savings. He's burned through any retirement he has. He has burned through, he said, Whitney, if we don't get it resolved and resources show up that I'm counting on within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to have to ask somebody else for money, and I don't know who to ask because they're all in the same boat he's in.
That is so frustrating.
The number of people who've burned through savings and retirement is just, it is mind-boggling. And it will be an issue that we struggle with for decades to come. Because there will be a day when all these people go to retire and their assets at retirement won't be a fraction of what they would have been because they had to exhaust all those savings simply waiting on benefits the state was obligated to pay because no one was there to answer the phone.
In one way, you know, there's I mean, I come from a pastoring background. There's a little bit of a pastoral side to what you do. That is sometimes you're asked to do things that you can do something about. You can definitely use your voice and speak up. And in some cases, like this friend that's 2 weeks away, I mean, you've probably done all you can do to help him at this point. What do you do when you've exhausted all your own resources with a constituent?
Well, I'd ask the listeners this to pray for that man and pray for everybody else that's facing that situation. Genuinely take time to pray for the ones you know, name them. The ones you don't know, those that are unnamed. There are thousands and thousands of the people in this boat. So pray for them, that they would be given peace and provision in all the matters and degrees to which they need it. From a legislative perspective, all I can do is reach out to the labor cabinet, which is something I've done. I've let them know the urgency of the situation. And I've done that over the course of the last year and a half. Whenever people have called, I mean, I've had people who are expecting a baby due any day, and people who, like I said, there are other folks that have burned through pensions and 401ks trying to make ends meet. They've cashed everything out at great penalty, I'll remind you, and then now they don't have that savings stacked up. I've tried to connect people to job hunting resources to try to find them new employment. It's heartbreaking. And I've said this. I think a lot of my and the constituents I've said this to have agreed. I think they'd be okay with bad news at this point if it's news at all. Yeah. What's so maddening for them and for me because they reach out to all of us asking for help, and all I can do is say, this is all we know. I can send your information to the labor cabinet, but then it goes into the ether. I don't know how quickly they'll get to your case. I don't think they know how quickly they can get to your case, or when or if.
So Senator Westerfield, I have this question. If I reach out to you and in fact, any elected leader, for the most part, if I reach out by email or phone call, leave a message on the voice line, I usually get some kind of response. I used to get a letter from some folks would send a letter out, say, we received your comment. Thank you for reaching out to us, whatever it was. But I knew that the message had been received. Yeah. Is that required in your role? Is it something that you do just because you're accountable to your constituents?
It is not required. We have, I answer every email. It sometimes takes time because the volume of emails that come in at different times. I respond to every phone call that I get that comes to me. I don't respond, or I can't humanly respond to every call I get on the message line, but I get those messages. We used to get what's called green slips. They would very literally, each message would be printed on a green slip of paper and then be brought into the legislator every day or at the end of every week, and you could go through and see exactly the message people left behind. I now get that delivered electronically. And so I can respond to those as much as I can, and I still get those messages even if I can't respond to each one of them. There's some legislators who are very active on Twitter and Facebook. No joke, just last night, a constituent from over in Logan County tagged me in a tweet they posted, reaching out to the Department of Education about something. I let her know. I replied, said, I'll reach out on your behalf and see if I can get an answer. And so I sent an email to their legislative affairs guy last night saying, can you answer this question? You do the
that means a lot. That means a lot. It means a lot to people to know that at least someone on the other end heard this. I may come back on that green slip question, ask about our governor's office. Hey, real quick, besides running for office, which is what you've done to make a difference in law and justice matters, what can the average citizen do who probably doesn't have the inclination to run for public office? What options are available for us to make a difference that way?
Sort of the same advice I gave to the hypothetical teenager you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Get involved, and most important, and I cannot overstate this enough, get informed.
Yeah.
I got a letter once from a lady who's known me all my life, and she's a wonderful lady. I've known her all my life, and it was in my second or third year in the Senate, and she sent me a postcard. It was addressed to Congressman Westerfield. And my heart sank a little bit. And I've had people stop Amanda in the grocery store and say, I thought you moved to D.C. with Whitney. The level of awareness of what's happening is pretty low.
Yeah.
In my first year in the Senate, and the Senate districts in the 2010 census data, and this is obviously about to change a bit, but in 2010 census data, my district is about 114,000 people. I only got an email or a call from about 600 or so unique individuals from within my district in my first year in office.
Wow.
That's a pretty low participation rate.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people just don't know who their state senator and state representative is.
You're exactly right.
What they do, what they're voting on. Every single thing that we do is online. I know not everybody has access to that, but that's becoming less and less of an excuse for most people in most households, for a lot of people, even senior citizens. When my mom, and I love Westerfield, but when my mom is able to find emojis in her text messages and send those, she's able to watch a live stream, and she's done that over the last year when she couldn't go to church in person. But you can watch every committee meeting. And you don't have to. Maybe education is not something you're interested in, but criminal justice is. You can watch your favorite judiciary chairman. Or maybe education is, and you can't stand the court system, so watch Senator Max Wise's committee meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe health and welfare and Senator Ralph Alvarado, a doctor.
Yep.
Watch his committee and pay attention to the bills that go through. This past year, there were 900 and some odd bills this session filed. 200 of them passed. And as we all well know, a slew of those were vetoed, and we overrode those vetoes.
Yep.
About 22% of the bills passed this year, which is a little higher than average before this year. But you can read, they're all indexed by heading, by topic, by sponsor, in-house or in the Senate. It's super easy to find. And when in doubt, call or email your legislator and ask.
Well, I would say this on behalf of your constituents. Some folks are intimidated because they have a certain view of you. They didn't grow up with you. They don't know you by first name or any other elected official. And they don't know what's going to happen when they make that phone call. That for the first time, it's like, well, are they going to ask me stuff I don't know? Are they going to ask me the name of of my elected leader? So I get it. I would say
that's fair. But if it helps the people watching this, we have awesome people working at the Legislative Research Commission. That's our administrative agency that it serves the legislature. Those are all the staffers, secretaries, researchers, analysts, bill drafters, to cafeteria workers, to janitors, to so forth, HR staff, everybody. We have a tremendous team of people up there. They're full-time. They're there year-round. If you call and you don't have a clue who represents you or does anything, if you just tell them where you live, they'll tell you exactly.
That's true, and that is the experience. That's exactly what happens. So once someone's done it one time with you guys, it's easy to do. I do have a question on the governor's side of things. So you may have heard Kentucky Baptist and others have been reaching out to the governor's office recently, and I made a phone call on behalf of Sunrise, foster care, child care agency in the state, and did that a week ago Monday. Was on hold 5 to 7 minutes. I think a switchboard operator picked up, eventually answered, and really didn't have much advice on what I should do to get my message across, and offered leave a message on the governor's line, which I eventually did. But really, I have no idea if that message ever gets listened to. Any hope for us who are calling? Is anybody hearing these messages?
I don't have hope.
Okay.
And this is an issue that you all have encountered here because of what's going on, what the Beshear administration has, I think, wrongfully done to the Sunrise organization by refusing to protect and allow them to honor their sincerely held religious convictions and beliefs. Right. You're getting a sample of this. The tens of thousands of people who've been waiting on unemployment benefits have been dealing with it for a year and a half now.
What they've been doing.
They get the same sort of response.
Well, then this happened to us, Whitney. So we put the number out there for the governor's number, which is the one I used, others used. But eventually, folks started calling that number, and it sent them to Barclay Lodge over in Cadiz. No, we were getting responses from people.
I'll remind you that a few months ago, Auditor Mike Harmon found over 400,000 unanswered and unread emails on unemployment. I have no confidence whatsoever in the constituent services effort, if there even is one, for the governor's office. I don't know who's manning those lines. I don't know if they're checking inquiries, if they're looking at the messages that are I honestly have no idea. I know that if you call the legislative line, the message line, they will take your message down verbatim.
Yep, I've heard it.
I've joked with people.
Done it.
I think they might even include profanity if you just were that angry about it.
Yeah.
Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe it depends on the operator you get, but they'll take your message down, what you say, and they'll get it to each one of us.
Yeah. That's been my experience.
That same operation is not happening, to my knowledge, over at the governor's office, and it serves him. It serves him well, apparently, to get away with that, because there's no one holding him accountable for it. The media is not holding him accountable for that. His best explanation for the 500,000 almost emails for unemployment that went unanswered was just that, well, some of those were repeat. It wasn't really that big a number. Well, there's still tens of thousands of people waiting on money to buy bread and water. So,
well, let me ask you about some specific legislation, and there's a few, so maybe a quick answer. The gambling bill that happened recently, you opposed that bill. So give us the high-level explanation of the bill and then why you opposed it.
It was a bailout for the historical horse racing machines, the slot machines. The Supreme Court found that those machines did not constitute parimutuel wagering, that wasn't proper, that the machines weren't proper, and they've been running for 10 years. Horse racing industry argued that, look, we've been doing these for 10 years. Look at how much money it's raised, how many jobs it's created, and persuaded enough legislators to vote in favor of changing the definition retroactively back to 2010 to allow all those machines that have proliferated, all 3-some-odd thousand, almost 4,000 machines. And by the way, they've got approval for, I think, another 15,000, or maybe a total of 15,000. So they've got room to grow, and they will undoubtedly grow. But we bailed out the horse tracks with a bill that changed the definition of parimutuel wagering to include this and anything else the Horse Racing Commission decides to give it or to count down the road. Very frustrated by that. I opposed it again because it's an expansion of gaming. I would have opposed it even if they'd done it properly, but the proper procedural way would be to amend the Constitution.
Right.
The Constitution does not permit this wagering. It never has. Just because the courts have permitted it to go along without striking it down, just because it's been going on, doesn't mean it's legal under our Constitution. They should have done a constitutional amendment. And they knew that, but they finally had the votes to pass it, which is unfortunate. It is already working harm on the people that I represent. There are families that are suffering from addiction issues because of this new facility in Oak Grove. And it's no different from any of the other tracks. It certainly provides jobs. It certainly provides revenue for the various industries that are connected to horse racing, from horse farms and other ag businesses. All of that I get. I'm not opposed to any of that. And I wish we could have all that without the harms that come with gambling. But we can't. At least not when gambling is the way that we bring that money in.
Conscience Protection Act. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, Senator Meredith has filed this a number of times. We heard it in committee. This is a bill that simply tells doctors that they are free to abstain from providing a healthcare service that violates their conscience. If a doctor doesn't want to perform an abortion, they shouldn't have to. It's not about specifically abortion. It's very specifically about any kind of healthcare service.
Right.
But it's protecting those physicians or the hospitals that hire them that are based on a mission of faith or what have you, that are specifically guided by a set of core principles that say we won't cross this line. Maybe they won't do X procedure because of whatever sincerely held religious belief. I support it. I think it's consistent with the AMA code of ethics that's already in place for physicians. And we need to codify it. I remain disappointed that Senator Meredith's bill come out of committee now. It has come out of committee now twice, I believe, last year and this year, and hasn't come to the floor for a vote. I know he's frustrated by that. I appreciate him filing it. I expect he'll file it again in 22, and I'll support it again in 22.
Save Women's Sports Act.
Robbie Mills, I believe, filed this bill, or he was a co-sponsor if he didn't file it. I support this. This is making sure that boys play against boys and girls play against girls, biological girls against girls and biological boys against boys. This transgender movement is continuing to grow and develop, and it's unhealthy. It's not at all consistent with God's word, and we need to do what we can to make sure that we honor and protect what God created, man and woman. The bill didn't advance, if I'm not mistaken, because of we had various conversations about it. I think it has the support. I haven't taken a vote in our Senate caucus, but I think there's enough votes for it, if I had to guess. But the reason it didn't advance, I'm told, is because the Kentucky High School Athletic, I said that, and I forget that acronym, KHSAA, whatever that athletic association is, already has a regulation that's in place that accomplishes what the bill would have done and perhaps does it in a more streamlined way. I haven't read that regulation, and I wasn't on the committee that would have heard that bill or had the bill, so we didn't move it forward. I wasn't involved in that, but that was the discussion that we had, so it did not advance.
A bill that you sponsored dealing with juvenile justice, is it Senate Bill 36?
It was 36.
It's 32.
But 36 became a federal stimulus money appropriating bill, and my language was attached to Senate Bill 32, sponsored by Senator Philip Wheeler from Pikeville. Very simply, it made a change to juvenile bills. There are cases where kids who are kids, they are minors, not adults yet, that are charged with crimes, and they are transferred to circuit court to be tried as adults. That's still possible. There was one kind of case in our statutes that made that transfer to circuit court mandatory. Even if the district court judge, and in Kentucky our district judges preside over juvenile dockets, even if the district judge wanted to keep it in juvenile court, even if the county attorney wanted to keep it in juvenile court, if everybody wanted to keep it, they still couldn't, because the transfer was mandatory. That bill eliminated that mandatory transfer, restores judicial discretion and prosecutorial discretion in those district court dockets, and has this was my intention, not only to restore that discretion, but importantly to eliminate a point of racial disparity. More black and brown kids were caught by that mandatory transfer than white kids, based on their proportional share of the population. And so it achieved both ends. I'm glad to see the bill pass.
Yeah, well, good job on that, and thank you for taking up issues like that as well as the other things that you care about. Protection adoption provision. I'm not sure I'm reading this right. Is there something that's being worked on to protect agencies like Sunrise? And so let me give a little background here for folks who will join. Sunrise is an agency of the Kentucky Baptist Convention. They've formerly known as Kentucky Baptist Homes for Children, been around for 150 plus years. In 1970, the Kentucky state government came to Sunrise needing help with the children in their custody and Sunrise agreed to become a provider for the state and works through a contract with them. Now our governor's not wanting to renew their contract to keep giving referrals to Sunrise. Is there something that's in the works that would provide protection for agencies like Sunrise who do have deeply held religious convictions?
I haven't spoken to any other legislators yet, but I'm looking at a couple of drafts myself right now of legislation that would be considered in the 22 session to protect the religious beliefs of organizations like Sunrise. We already have RFRA here in Kentucky, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which I was proud to carry on the Senate floor for the veto override vote in 2013 over the Elder Bashir's veto of that bill.
Okay.
We have that in place. I still think, though, that we should consider or at least explore options for requiring the government to not discriminate against people who hold the values that we hold, or anybody else's beliefs for that matter. If there are other agencies that want to do other things, fine. But the state shouldn't punish Sunrise and the services it's been providing for decades for families and children just because it wants to discriminate here. The irony that they're discriminating on the basis of an argument not to discriminate. It's ridiculous.
So we're reaching out to the governor. There lots of media groups have picked up the story, and for the most part, it's being fairly represented. A lot of local newspapers are telling things the way.
Well, the Courier Journal headline was
awful. It was awful.
Terrible.
It's hard to believe it wasn't intentional, but it was unfortunately it was awful.
Made it out to believe Sunrise was the one that walked away.
Yeah,
left these kids hanging. It was a terribly written headline.
I think since then, folks have picked up that Sunrise has been at this for, I thought it was 6 to 9 months. It's actually been a year that they've been trying to get the contract renewed. They've made more than 20 documented attempts through their legal counsel to try and just have a conversation with the cabinet. Can't even get a return email in a lot of cases, or even have a conversation with them. So Sunrise would sign a contract today if a contract would be presented to them that they could go along with. So, Whitney, any advice to us as we're trying to advocate on behalf of Sunrise? Kentucky Baptists are speaking up. Other groups, Commonwealth Policy Center, Family Foundation have joined in.
Continue to write letters, to make those calls, reach out to your legislator, and to make sure that they're engaged in reaching out to the executive branch. I've got a letter going out to the administration this afternoon. I also make some informal text message reaches out to folks to see if I can't get something done, or just at least find out and let them know that I'm making inquiries as well. But get legislators and your legislator, wherever you are listening to this, make sure they're reaching out and asking questions and demanding, frankly, that religious liberty be honored and protected, whether it's Christians or some other faith. We're not trying to single out and protect Baptists or Christians. We're just trying to protect religious beliefs.
Well,
and Sunrise has its version of those that it wants to honor and be protected by this contract, and it should be allowed to do that. So
next session, you all have a longer session than you did this time. What are you looking forward to? What do you see that could be coming up?
Things on the radar. The bill related to Sunrise and other organizations like that, I think, is likely to be considered. Obviously, it's a full 60-day session. We meet for 60 days in even years, and we have a full 2-year budget cycle bill to draft again. So this is our third budget session in a row. But this will be a full budget. So I've been pestering my good friend and next door neighbor and constituent, Honorable Chairman Jason Petrie, who's now the budget chairman in the House, where the budget will start. I got a speed dial line directly in his office for requests and things. So that'll be a big priority. One of the big things I'll continue to work on are some criminal justice reform policies. The Pew Charitable Trust organization has agreed to come back in the state. They're actually on the ground. In fact, have a call with them. They're virtually on the ground. I don't think they've actually been here in the state yet because of the pandemic. But we have a call later today to talk about some updates about some of the meetings they've had with a lot of the stakeholders. We're looking at the population of people that are in custody pre-trial, who've never been found guilty of anything, but who are also struggling with substance use disorders, behavioral health issues, employment issues. The single biggest improvement you can make to recidivism is to make sure when people get out of jail, they got a job. If they've got a place to work, they're far, far less likely to commit a crime again and to return to the criminal justice system. We want to make sure that's as smooth as possible. And the vast majority of people in custody who are struggling with substance use behavior issues, addiction, behavioral health issues of other stripes and varieties, haven't gotten the help that they need or access to it. We're going to try to tackle as much of that as we can, if we can. I don't know what that, there is no bill yet, but that's what we're working on over the course of this interim. And then, of course, responding to COVID to the extent that we can. We'll appropriate additional money. And then the last big ticket thing is redistricting. At some point between now and the end of this year, I would assume, my guess right now, there will be a special before the end of the year, but that's entirely up to the governor under our Constitution, at least for now, to call us into a special session. But we have new census data coming our way, and it's time for us to redraw legislative districts and congressional districts. And so that'll be on our minds this fall and as we come into January, if it hadn't already been done.
Well, you're obviously passionate about these issues, so you're wired for the work the Lord's given you to do. Hey, let's talk before we finish up about House Bill 91 that you guys passed this year. Tell folks what that is and why it matters.
A very short constitutional amendment, House Bill 91. Honored to vote for it. So proud. I pushed and cajoled and kicked and screamed to try to get it moving in the Senate like others did. Mm-hmm. So thankful for Representative Joe Fisher, my friend from Northern Kentucky, for filing the bill again and again and again till we finally got it passed. It's a constitutional amendment that simply says that if Roe versus Wade is ever overturned, in short, the legislative branch is the one that gets to make policy on pro-life and protecting unborn lives policy issues. Mm-hmm. That the Kentucky Supreme Court is not permitted to create a right out of whole cloth, the way that the U.S. Supreme Court has done since Roe, to create a right to an abortion, because one does not exist in our Constitution. So my hope is that one day, like yours is, that Roe is overturned, fully overturned and struck down. And my hope is that this constitutional amendment will be ratified. I'll remind voter or listeners, it won't be on the ballot until November of 2022. We don't have another general elect. We don't have any elections in 21. It won't be on the ballot until the next general election. So that's November of 22. We've got a year and a half to go. And there may be other constitutional amendments proposed next year in the session that may end up there with it. But I'm so thrilled to see that. And I plan to work as hard as I can to get it passed next November.
Well, so if Roe is overturned, that doesn't abolish abortion in the United States. It just turns it back to each state, and so there'll be different state. But Kentucky, as it is right now, abortion would still be allowed in Kentucky if Roe was overturned. Is that correct?
It would, unless and until the legislature acted to prohibit it in some way more than it already has. My hope is that we would prohibit it, but we can't do that since Roe is the law of the land, the law as it stands today, under the Supreme Court's ruling, and not just Roe, but it's Casey and other decisions that flowed from that. So again, my hope is that Roe is overturned so that we can legislate and create that. But this is a helpful transition to remind voters of something and listeners of this, of something very important. I had a conversation with my friend Jeff Nalsinger from Olmsted just earlier this morning by text. I told him, I want to pull up what I said to him. I told him that, that the next big priority for conservatives, for Christians, not just we've got a commanding control of the General Assembly here in Kentucky. The next frontier is the Kentucky Supreme Court. That's where a lot of these arguments are going to be fought in the years and years ahead. I talked about the governor's executive orders earlier. There's a case sitting in front of the Kentucky Supreme Court right now as we record this that's going to be about whether or not the governor has unchecked executive power during states of emergency. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned about where the court's going to go. I have no idea where the court will go. But those 7 justices wield an incredible amount of power. And I think it's important that we elect 7 people that represent the values that we hold dear. And the 1st district seat, I ran for that in 2019, was thankful to win a number of counties, but did not win that race. But that seat is up again next year in 22, along with, I think, most of the other seats, if not all of them.
Okay.
So there are judicial elections at the appellate and the Supreme Court level in Kentucky that matter a very huge amount, that matter a great deal, and that will impact Kentucky policy for years and decades to come.
You've got your work cut out for you, Senator Westerfield. Wrapping up, let's talk about leadership. Who's been a role model for you in terms of a leader that you've learned from and like to even model some of your life after?
Well, I think my dad
Yeah.
and my mom, in different regards, in different respects, for two very, very different people. Those who knew Tom Westerfield and know Gina Westerfield. My dad passed away actually on September 11th of my election year, so he didn't get to see me win. Yeah. But know that they are two very different human beings. I looked up to both of them, though, and learned a great deal from both of them, whether it's about persistence or diligence. I've learned that from the two of them. And then watching other legislators, not just here and not just on the federal level and at the local level and state level, but all of them. There are a number of legislators, even now, that I look up to and that I watch and observe. And now that I've been there a while, I can critique a little bit when the time comes in a respectful and biblical way. And I think there's just been a blend of those folks, other professionals, other attorneys that I've watched here in Hopkinsville that I look up to. It's helpful to remind myself that they're sinners just like I am, and they screw up just like I do. It helps me feel better about my own screw ups. And I've made mistakes as a legislator. I'm going to make more as a legislator and as an attorney, as a dad, as a husband. Yep. But I try my best to do what I think I'm supposed to do.
So you mentioned folks reaching out about various matters, be informed and be involved. I think I heard you say get informed and get involved. How much difference does it make to you as an elected leader when you're receiving emails, phone calls, letters, texts from your constituents? How much difference does it make on the matters that you're looking at?
It makes a huge difference, but I'm going to put an asterisk with that. Okay. I don't form emails and form letters are just nigh on meaningless to me. Other legislators can be moved by that. They'll just, I've seen there's another legislator or two that will stack up. They'll print out all the messages they get yes and all the messages they get no, and whichever pile is bigger, they'll go with. I don't think that's the best way to legislate. I think it's important and valuable to consider what your constituents are saying, but sometimes they don't have the information that you have. And you've got to make the best policy decision long term for your people. But I think I'm absolutely persuaded by letters and calls and messages that are personalized. There's a teacher over in Logan County, and he and I communicate very well by email or call on occasion when we talk, or in person when we could still have in-person visits, usually by email, and it's always polite and respectful. We don't agree on much, but he'll tell me exactly what he thinks, and he's been able to move the needle for me. I don't get form emails from him. The thousands and thousands of little one-click emails, you went to some website and they send a little blob generic thing, that doesn't move me at all. If all you could do was click the mouse a couple of times to send me an email about how passionate you are about something, I'm not persuaded you're passionate or care about it at all. And I'll reply every one of those emails. I'll type a reply once and then paste that reply for all those four emails. I get less than 0.5% of those people reply back with anything. I don't find that persuasive at all. So get informed and then reach out personally with your legislator. The people who are the most persuasive to me are the people who I've gotten to know and who have made themselves subject matter experts on certain issues and said, Whitney, this is what you need to look out for here, here, and here. Those make a huge difference.
Well, I'm grateful for you, and there's no doubt you reply. I've reached out to you a time or two. I've watched you go back and forth on Twitter in a really respectful way with some folks that you just disagree. They strongly disagree with you, but
sometimes I gotta bite my tongue and count to 10.
That's
I try my best.
You probably got that from your mom.
Yep.
Hey, I'm going to say a prayer for us, Senator Westerfield. I'm going to pray for folks with the unemployment issue that you mentioned. Any way we can pray for you or your family?
I just pray for all legislators and their families. This is a job that takes away a lot of time from family, from our other jobs. It's a big sacrifice for a lot of people, financial and time and stress and brain power. I ask for all of them. Whether you agree with that legislator or not, I'd keep them and their families in your prayers.
I'm not sure folks have any idea. I've not been that involved with Frankfurt, but just my little exposure, I've seen you guys are away from home a lot. You work a lot of hours. You do obviously have to do a lot of reading. Those bills are complicated. We might need more farmers writing bills and to be a little easier to read.
As an attorney, I would wholly endorse that.
Well, thank you for taking the time. Let me say a prayer for you and your work. Father God, thank you for your grace and mercy. Thank you for Whitney and getting to hear his story. Thank you for how you brought him to faith. Thank you for his family, dear Lord, and the rich legacy that they've poured out through their investment in their children's lives and now grandchildren. Father, we pray for these who are still battling unemployment issues, especially the one that was mentioned with 2 weeks already in trouble, but really in trouble. Please help and please provide. Lord God, you're our provider. And I pray, Lord, that folks would look to you and know you as their provider, even today. We pray for Senator Westerfield, for Amanda, for their children. We ask your watch, care, and blessings on them. Please strengthen their marriage together, their family. Please protect them from the evil one. Please put deep conviction in his heart about the things that matter most to you. And we do pray you'd use him and fellows who are men and women who are like-minded in the work that you've given them to do. We give you thanks today for loving us and saving us. And it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. That. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you all.